Welcome back to my update videos for this still untitled project. I kind of missed the weekly mark. I should have done this a couple days ago, but I had to help someone move and then I got lazy. So here we are, back at it again. That is strange. Okay, that was not there recently. Basically what we're going to go over in this video is a couple small things. So the big thing I want to go over is how I got it to look more like a PlayStation 1 game. There's not a lot of tutorials out there, especially for Unreal Engine, to get this look. There's a lot of stuff out there for Unity, but to achieve the look in Unreal, it's a bit more like rinse and repeat, I guess. You actually have to do stuff to figure it out. So one thing I did, let's drop us to unlit mode. So let's start off by looking at texture quality. So as you can see, a lot of the textures in the game now are much lower quality. You can actually get the pixelization and stuff like that going on. The ground, for instance, it's got a lot more visible pixels. Even the fire elements I've added, and I dropped the resolution of those too. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go over how to get that. It's actually pretty simple. So let's take, let's just take a wall, for instance. Okay, we'll use this as an example. So basically, what you're going to want to do is find the material you're going to be using. So for this wall, for instance, it's using m_brick_clay_new. So basically I would look that up. So as you can see, I've got a bunch of variations right here because I duplicated him to add like the blood splatter effects and stuff like that, so I could have a new material for each one. So we'll just click on the base one. Let's say this is the one we're going to edit. So what you're going to want to do is go to the material, and you're going to want to find the textures that it's using. So most of them are going to be labeled this way. So basically you're going to have an M underscore for material, or actually you probably can't even see the screen. Let's do this. Here we go. So M is usually up at the top left corner. That's usually meaning it's a material. So it's going to start with an M, have an underscore, then go into what it's called. A lot of the textures are going to be called the same thing, except you're going to have a first and last letter. So the first one is going to be a T instead of an M for texture. And then the last one's going to be just a variation of it. So this one is _D, then you have N, and you have M. So these are just going to be different versions, or different types of texturing, be it UV maps, normal maps, specularity, depth, many different things that could be used to give it the look that you're seeing from the material. So what you want to do is you want to find each of these textures. So you have to go and you have to find each one. So let's minimize this. So we're going to be looking at T_brick. So as you can see, there's a bunch of different ones here because there's so many different types. So clay. So right here, we've narrowed it down to the 3 texture files that it's using for this specific material. All you do is you open those texture files. And the best way to do it is go up to the maximum texture size. Just set that. Most PS1 games, while it can support up to 256 by 256, a lot of games use 128 by 128 textures. It just kind of goes based on what you're using it for. I would suggest stuff that's not as up close in detail, like walls, floors, stuff like that. Probably use a 128. Although I've had to use a 64 by 64 on a couple things because they still look a bit too detailed. And you can reserve the 256 by 256 for like character models or something like that. It's going to be more upfront in the camera. Or just obviously choose whatever you want that's going to go for the best art style for your game. The other big thing though, so if we set this to 0, so this is what it normally looks like. So maximum texture size at 0 basically means it's just set to the default. So this texture by default was 2048 by 2048. So it's at a 2K resolution, so it's pretty good. The other thing is the filter. So it's set for default filter. So basically that default filter is going to give it a nice kind of smooth look. So if I drop this back down to the 128 that I had it set as, you can tell that it's pretty blurry. So you want to take off that filter and go to nearest. That essentially just gets rid of the filtering, which definitely gives it that much more blocky look. And obviously, if you're going for like a Nintendo 64 type game or something, you could throw in like bilinear filtering, something like that. So it still gives you the low res look, but smooths everything out. Gives you, I don't know, it's, a lot of people argue that Nintendo 64 looked better because of that, but I think it looked worse because it did crush a lot of the detail. Although it didn't look as jagged, it did get rid of a lot of the detail. So I would just drop that down to nearest if you want to get that pixelized look. And then once you do that to every single texture that the material is using, it's going to make that material pixelated, much like the ground or this, which I placed 3 different planes and I put them just right so you get a little bit of a little bit of warping and clipping between them, which I think looks pretty cool. One thing I haven't been able to do yet is actually get that PS1 texture warping. You get a lot when textures move close to the screen, they start to warp a bit on the PlayStation. That's one thing I haven't done yet. I found a couple tutorials. I just got to work with them and see if I can figure out a way to do it, because everything's for older versions of Unreal Engine that doesn't quite translate to the newest version. So I have to work around with that a little bit more. Basically, everything I'm doing here is primarily done either from tutorials or just figuring it out on my own. The texture, pretty easy. You just go to the texture file, you can change the maximum resolution, and it adjusts everything. So now they all have these very PS1 style look. And it's also good for especially something like this steel pipe here, or not pipe, this steel pillar. This is one of the Mega Scan packs you can download for free from the Epic Marketplace for Unreal. But all these Mega Scans are either in usually 4K resolution or 8K. So this guy was in 8K resolution. So that's obviously way too high. So it was good being able to go in there, find the textures for it, and drop that down to a lower quality. Not just for the style of the game, but also for optimization, because you can't have an 8K texture running at all times. It's pretty demanding. Even if it's just one, that can still be kind of a pain, because then you're going to start running into issues. If my camera's out here facing this way and I start getting frame drops, I don't know why. It's probably because there's an 8K texture being rendered somewhere. And the main reason I had to do this is because the fire effects, there was so many particles going on that it was exceeding my texture streaming limit. And rather than mess with that, I just decided I want to figure out how to lower texture quality. So I was able to do that. So everything's got a much lower PS1 style feel. The next thing I want to look at is the actual meshes. So obviously a lot of PlayStation games have very blocky meshes. That's just kind of the thing. They didn't have enough polygons back then, enough power to render the polygons, so they had very blocky meshes. This was a bit more confusing because a lot of things I could find basically would just say, oh, go in, find an object, a static mesh, and change the LOD bias. And they'll just force it to render at a lower, LOD variant. But that's kind of a half measure. I actually wanted to lower the actual triangle count. It actually wasn't super hard, though. It just took a bit of digging to do that. So we'll use this skeleton right here, for instance. Normally this guy looks pretty detailed. But SM underscore skeleton 7. So SM underscore skeleton, and it's number 7 here. So I was trying to figure out how to do it, and just obviously you can LOD blah 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 blah. The thing you want to look at is reduction settings. If you go to reduction settings and leave the LOD at auto, this will basically change the setting for every single variant. So LOD 0 is the close-up, 1, 2, and 3. So just leave it at auto, it changes all of them for you. All you gotta do is find your reduction settings. Leave it at triangles. I suggest leaving it at triangles, because that's your actual polygon count. And then from here you can change the percentage. So if I do 0%, that's all I get. If I do 100%, this should bump it back up to the full amount. So very rounded edges. You do have to lower these a lot to get that style. So I was at 5%. Okay, I had to drop this guy down to a 5% amount of triangles. And it still looks detailed. You can still tell what it is, but it has a much jankier look to it. So that's kind of what you want to do there. I should probably say that just to be sure. And that goes for basically everything. Even like the character model. I basically this is one of the packs you can get from the Epic Store. It was free for a while. I don't know if it still is. It's called Scanned 3D People Pack. For this one was a bit trickier. I think I actually had to go in to... I forget which one it was. Was it the actual... Okay. So it's a bit more convoluted because you're actually opening up the whole kind of character mesh. The rig, the skeleton, everything. It is still in here, so LED set to auto, and down here, percent triangles, 0.15. So lowered quite a bit. The biggest thing about this guy, though, the reason I couldn't go any higher or any lower is because, for one thing, the eyes start warping. So if I drop this down to a 0.1, you can see there's a lot of inconsistencies. It's not a balance. It doesn't balance between each section of the character's body because obviously not everything's symmetrical. If I go any lower, he starts to get like a pinhead going and stuff like that. So it's this is a pretty good setting. You're not going to see the character's eyes much because of the camera angles. Then I just lowered the texture resolution. So again, I went up to materials, up there at rp_nathan_rigged_ blah, 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 blah. Found that guy, the material for it, then found the textures, lowered them down to, I think, 64 by 64. So that's what I did there. The other two things are going to be the pixelization filter and the color downsampling. So these are two things that were pretty easy to find online. You can definitely tell there's a lot of pixelization going on overall, and the colors are also a bit more crushed to kind of mimic that limited color palette the PlayStation could handle, a much lower bit rate. I think 15-bit, that's what it was limited to, something like that. Basically for that, the materials, for instance, like this is what the material looks like for the color. There's a really good tutorial online for it. Basically, the guy just walks you through how to do it. Just adding stuff like scene texture, different variables and vectors, stuff like that. I'm not going to go over this guy too much or the pixelization because I got those specifically from tutorials on YouTube. It was just, how do I look up PlayStation color at Unreal? And I found it. And then the pixelization, let me see if I can find the YouTube video for it. Where are my playlists? There it is. Shader, pixelate. So this is what it was. So what you're going to want to do is, if you want to get this this look to it, here we go. So Ira-game. So Unreal 4 Retro Pixel Tutorial. This is the one I followed to get the pixelization. So just go here, click on them, and you're good to go. And then from there, you're able to make an instance of it, which allows you to actually control the pixelization amount, which is really cool. The other thing is just fixed camera angles. That's a good thing to do in a PlayStation 1 style game. That's something you can just find on the Unreal Engine 4 documentation that'll walk you through how to do that. The main thing I've been doing recently, aside from just spending way too much time adjusting the visuals, actually having to go into every single texture I've used so far and every single mesh and lower the quality of it, took hours and hours and hours because they were already imported, so I couldn't just force it for every new asset because they're already in the engine. So basically the other thing I've been doing is I took this house. It's just a generic house you can download, but I just wanted to try inside a house fixed camera positions. So that's what I did. I just put the house together, added some lighting, and put all the fixed camera positions in. The next thing I really need to do is work on the actual character. I'm just playing the default walk animation all the time because I don't have any blueprints that'll work with this guy yet. But I do have a few animations I can use. I just have to actually learn how to do that. Put them all into a blueprint so it actually plays them. And then, yeah, just keep on working on the game. Basically, that's the main things I've done so far. Here's some other stuff I put in the game. Yeah, reducing the these things all had really high polygon counts, so I dropped those down, which makes them look a lot more old school, which is cool. But yeah, that is the update for my progress. I'm hoping within the next week or so I can actually have some better character animations in place, maybe have a couple more buildings built that you can actually explore. I'm shooting for an actual demo within the next 2 months. Just something basic, point A to point B, maybe have 1 or 2 enemies you can fight, shoot or whatever. But just something that's actually somewhat playable. But for now, thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you want to check out the next videos. I'm still trying to do weekly. I don't know how consistent that's going to be. Like I said in the first video, I'm going to put stuff out whenever I'm able to. In between working on the game and playing all the new games that keep coming out. So just hit the subscribe button if you want to keep up to date on it. Alright. Peace.